Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamunatira Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamunatira Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nirvasesa Shunyavadi Paschatade Satarne. Okay, so I thought we'd read from the chapter on devotional service, and I believe that it's the chapter 16. Sometimes they change the titles from the original book. Okay, chapter 12, page 509. Okay, we'll just start from the beginning. Okay. Good? You have it, everyone? Okay. Okay, text 1. You can repeat after me. Arjuna vacha evam satata yukta ye bhaktas tvam paryupasate ye chapi aksharam avyaktam ye chapi aksharam avyaktam tesham ke yogavittama tesham ke yogavittama. Okay, translation. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in their devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Repeat after me. Oh. Arjuna inquired. Repeat after me. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal. It has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalists can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, and the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. We find in this chapter that of the different processes for realization of the Absolute Truth, Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, is the highest. If one at all desires to have the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must take to devotional service. Those who worship the Supreme Lord directly by devotional service are called personalists. Those who engage themselves in meditation on the impersonal Brahman are called impersonalists. Arjuna is here questioning which position is better. There are different ways to realize the absolute truth, but Krishna indicates in this chapter that bhakti yoga, or devotional service to him, is the highest of all. It is the most direct, and it is the easiest means for association with the Godhead. In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord explained that a living entity is not the material body, he is a spiritual spark, and the absolute truth is the spiritual whole. In the seventh chapter, he spoke of the living entity as being part and parcel of the Supreme Whole, and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole. Then again, in the eighth chapter, it was said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, to the abode of Krishna. And at the end of the sixth chapter, the Lord clearly said that of all the yogis, one who always thinks of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest spiritual realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation for commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahmajyoti. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the Absolute Truth, which is beyond the reach of the senses and is not manifest. And so factually there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now, Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. In other words, he is clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best, because he could thus understand all other forms, and at the same time there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. The important question asked of Krishna by Arjuna will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and personal conceptions of the Absolute Truth. Read a little more. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mai Aveshya Manoye Mam Mai Aveshya Manoye Mam Ditya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Prayopetas Teme Yukta Tamamata. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix, I'll read the whole thing, we can repeat after that. Those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be the most perfect. Repeat after me. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be the most perfect. Purport Srila Prabhupada. In answer to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his personal form and who worships him with faith and devotion is to be considered most perfect in yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities, because everything is done for Krishna. A pure devotee is constantly engaged. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samādhi. Okay, text 3 to 4. Dvaksharam anirdeshyam avyaktam paryapasate sarvatragam achintyang cha kutastam achalang dhruvam sandiyam yendriya gramam sandiyam yendriya gramam sarvatra samabudhaya te prapnuvanti mam eva sarvabhuta hite rataha. Translation. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed, and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons, engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me. Repeat after me. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons, engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who do not directly worship the Supreme Godhead, Krishna, but who attempt to achieve the same goal by an indirect process, also ultimately achieve the same goal, Sri Krishna. Quote, after many births, the man of wisdom seeks refuge in me, knowing that Vasudeva is all in all. Unquote. When a person comes to full knowledge after many births, he surrenders unto Lord Krishna. If one approaches the Godhead by the method mentioned in this verse, he has to control his senses, render service to everyone, and engage in the welfare of all beings. It is inferred that one has to approach Lord Krishna, otherwise there is no perfect realization. Often there is much penance involved before one fully surrenders unto him. In order to perceive the supersoul within the individual soul, one has to cease the sensual activities of seeing, hearing, tasting, working, etc. Then one comes to understand that the Supreme Soul is present everywhere. Realizing this, one envies no living entity. He sees no difference between man and animal, because he sees soul only, not the outer covering. But for the common man, this method of impersonal realization is very difficult. So, Srila Prabhupada explains very well, and of course Krishna is saying that trying to meditate on something which is beyond our senses is not recommended. It's very, very difficult. But the process of Krishna consciousness, which is what we are trying to do in our temples, is a direct process. There's somebody there, and we're trying to please him. And we are discovering that by pleasing Krishna, that we feel good, we feel fulfilled, we feel happy. So Krishna consciousness is very simple, actually. And the method, especially, of chanting Hare Krishna is very easy. It doesn't require any particular talent or economic status or educational status or anything like that. It's very simple. But we're inquisitive beings, and we want to be assured that we're doing the right thing. And why do we do this and why do we do that, right? When you do anything, there's always a method, and there's a better method, and there's things that are helpful and things that are detrimental. So in Krishna consciousness, we have rules that we follow. We don't intoxicate ourselves or have illicit sex or gamble or eat animals, because these are unbeneficial. So by practicing Krishna consciousness, we discover our real position. We serve, no matter what. If we don't want to serve Krishna, we are obliged to serve so many things. We have to serve our country, we serve our fellow man, we serve our pets, in so many ways. You go to any business, they have a slogan, service is our greatest asset, or whatever. We can't get away from serving. That's our nature. It's like salt or sugar. Sugar is sweet, and salt is salty. Okay, the soul's essence is a servant, and we can't really get away from that. Although, in this world, we're trying. We've been trying for a long time. We want others to serve us, and even though one may desire to be, let's say, president of the United States or whatever it might be, the idea is that we want to put ourselves in a superior position because we have the tendency to be like Krishna, because Krishna is the Supreme Person. Sometimes we have this same tendency, So the truth is that if you become a president of the United States, what you become is the servant of the whole country. You can't get away from being the servant. Okay. So the dilemma in this material world is that we have to come to terms with something that's very close to the vest, shall we say. That we have to give it up. And it's not easy because we've been doing it and we're conditioned to try to enjoy in any number of millions and billions of ways, and we've come, by the grace of Krishna and Srila Prabhupada and the devotees, to try to understand, there's something more than trying to become king of the hill, or becoming a big scientist, or whatever it is that we're desiring to have or to do or to be. And that is that we're really very tiny. We're very, very small, insignificant, parts and parcel of God, of Krishna. And the truth is that if you saw what Srila Prabhupada was able to do, at 70 years old, to travel across the ocean and to start an international society for Krishna consciousness by himself with no backing, the point is the soul is very powerful. The soul is very, very capable of doing things that are inconceivable. And we know that by practicing certain types of yoga, yogis who are very, very, very few anymore, they can develop mystical powers. Okay, so walk on water, they can create a planet, can become lighter than a feather. And some yogis, they can take a bath in a river over here and then pop up in some other river over there, going through the waterways. They do all kinds of things that are completely contrary to what modern science says is possible. Okay, and those are just material. Okay, but the soul is, again, 10,000th part of a tip of a hair. That's how big we are. We're not very big, but we're identifying with this body, and so I go to the gym, I press some weights, and I become very big, or I go to school and get some PhD, whatever it is, something, to bolster my ego. But the truth is, we're still very, very tiny. Okay, so worshiping Krishna is natural, just like Arjuna. The previous chapter, Krishna is describing the universal form, right? And there's so many mouths, and you know, we see so many. I mean, it's just all these different things of different opulences of Krishna, and he really didn't want to see that. He was very much afraid, actually. So, you know, this universal form is just, you know. But Arjuna asked that question, and the whole thing, the whole Bhagavad Gita is a setup. That Arjuna could ask the questions that Krishna could answer for the benefit of us, those of us in the future who are today, to hear these things. Okay, anyone can say I'm God. Pretty easy. I'm God. So there are people, foolish people, who think, oh, okay, that's great. So go and prove it. What can you do? Can you show your universal form? And then he'll bluff and say, well, you don't have the eyes to see it. You see. But they can't lift Govardhan Hill. They cannot show anything special, and even if they do, does that make them God? I don't want to mention any names, but there are, you know, many people get followers by doing some magic tricks or something like that. And Prabhupada tells a funny story that there was one yogi doing these different tricks, right? He's a magician. And so the magician and the yogi were going back and forth. And it's like, if someone says, you know, I'm God, then you know, these magic tricks can be done by a magician. It's not that you become God by doing some magic tricks. The point is that God is always God, and we don't have to try to imitate him. And that all of the activities that we perform in the material world to try to, you know, upgrade our ego are simply imitation. I remember years ago, Srila Prabhupada gave a lecture in Balboa Park. And he said you should give credit where credit is due. Right? We want to take credit for so many things. We put, you know, satellites into outer space, and we have, you know, GPS, and, you know, all kinds of things. Okay. So it's one thing to put a little tiny satellite and make it go around the Earth. It's another thing to create a whole universe full of planets floating in the outer space, you know, in such precision that you know, you can make a clock and you know, predict into the future exactly all of when the sun will rise, when the moon will rise, all these different movements of the planets are so perfectly done. Can you do that? Well, no. So the point is that at a certain point in evolution, you get a human form, you get a human body. And that human body allows you, it enables you to understand things that are beyond our senses. And to wonder, what is, you know, like, what's that all about, Alfie? What is this world? And who are we? Lord Chaitanya was approached by Sanatana Goswami. He said, I don't even know who I am. I'm known as a great scholar. I don't even know who I am, and I don't know why I'm suffering. And Prabhupada explains, if you don't come to that conclusion, then you really have missed the point of human life. And so, you know, we don't find, unfortunately, people thronging to the Hare Krishna temple to find out the goal of life. They're very much engaged in, you know, buzzing around on the water, you know, surfing, or using the sailboats or the ski-doos or everything else, whatever is enjoyable, because they haven't understood that human form of life is meant for things that are greater than that. Okay, we can play with a little rubber ducky in our bathtub, but that's not the goal of life. Okay, and these things are very temporary. They don't really make you satisfied. But a modern society is designed in such a way for, you know, consumerism. You have to buy this or buy that, or it's not who you are, but who you know and what you drive and where you live. All of these illusory things that we're supposed to think will bring us happiness, and unfortunately it doesn't. And people are working very, very hard, getting education, a big position, or whatever it may be. But the real satisfaction of life is unknown. And it's very sad, because human form of life is obtained after going through many, many millions of other species of life. And Srila Prabhupada explains it. We've been there. We've done that. We've done everything. Just like when you go to college and you're taking classes in college, it's understood that you went through the other grades. Okay? So human form of life is very, very important. It's very, very treacherous, actually, because now we're given choices. As animals, you have no choice. If it's time to bark, you bark. If it's time to eat, whatever is available. Okay, you can't go to school. There's no restaurants. Animal life is very stressful, to say the least. So the human form of life is an opportunity to do something, to try to understand something that we haven't done before. And that is to try to understand who we actually are and what we're supposed to do. Okay, so Krishna is explaining, don't try to do these other methods. In times past, in different ages, the meditation process was the method for self-realization. In this age, we don't live long enough, because the meditation process can take, 100,000 years or 40,000 years. How many years? We don't even live 100 years. And even if we could try to do it, our minds are too distracted. This is requires very austere condition, living away from society, away from other people, somewhere in the jungle, and you have to be, your mind has to be steady. So if there's some animal, you just have to trust that God's going to protect you, not eat you or bite you. It's just not practical at all. But what we have today in yoga societies is kind of just a gymnastics. Yeah, it'll make you healthy. That's not a problem with it. But it's not the method for self-realization, because yoga means to connect, okay? To connect with God. That's the whole point. So Srila Prabhupada has very kindly established this Krishna consciousness movement, so we can come together, hear about Krishna, and engage in devotional activities. Hearing and chanting and serving and praying and worshiping, it's all here. It's all here. And if you can't make it to the temple, you can go online. But the pandemic has spawned many Zoom classes, and there's so many videos now through Dandavats or different places where you can have associations by hearing, because that's the main thing. Okay, but it's especially powerful when you come to the temple, because the whole atmosphere. This temple is not different from Krishna. Anything to do with Krishna is not different from him. His name, his temple, everything. People say, well, why should I go to the temple if Krishna's everywhere? Why should I go to the temple? Well, so that means Krishna's not in the temple? But it's especially powerful because everyone is on the same focus, that we're worshiping Krishna, we're chanting the names of Krishna, reading Krishna's words, and helping each other. I just happen to be sitting here. One day, maybe all of you will have an opportunity to speak, just Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Pariksit, it didn't really matter who was speaking. Anybody not familiar with those two personalities? Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Pariksit? That's whom you do. Anyway. So the point is that discussion about Krishna, even in the Christianity, it's that, wherever two people are, chanting my glories, that means Krishna is present. And within ourselves, and I'm speaking, you're hearing, the same presence of Krishna is felt. So it's very, very powerful. So, anyhow, I think I'm done here. So, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.